Carl, at Globis, we do a lot of corporate training and sort of development. And one question we're quite often asked is, can leaders or international leaders be made, or are they born? And for you personally, Carl, I think you've been very successful as a sort of expat in Asia, working in different countries, so more like a global leader. Do you think you just naturally have kind of the potential to do that, or was it just you've learned along the way, making lots of mistakes yourself? Or what is?
No, I don't subscribe to the, DNA answer.
Okay. Good. That's good. That's why Globis is in business. Yeah. Thanks very much.
And
Correct answer.
We invest a lot in training and development, particularly leadership training and development. But people ask me, why have you been with DuPont 30 years, which I have been, and I can't believe it's been 30 years, and I think that the answer really is I've had such a varied number of assignments that every one I wanted to keep until my last day of working, because they were exciting and the learning curve was always up. And if it wasn't up when I got into it, you turn it up. You just personally go after what's new and what you can improve and what you can make better. And so you have to have the right attitude, but what a wonderful workplace and work environment I've had at DuPont. I think we're 210 years old, and we have a very varied number of businesses. I worked in the automotive industry, the healthcare industry, the finance area. So it's been like a slice of the global GDP. When it comes to international cultures, certain people have that interest and curiosity, and certain people don't. So naturally, if you want to work in a global environment, it would be best to have that kind of interest, which I certainly do.
Curiosity, be very.
Oh, sure, yeah. One of the reasons I love working in Asia is the cultural differences are so visible, profound, and interesting to me. We Americans, for example, did not learn a lot in school about Southeast Asian history. And one of my hobbies is Southeast Asian history. And we learn about the post-colonization history of ASEAN, after the European colonization. And there's so many centuries before that where there's this rich culture, this Buddhist culture and history of the migration from India. It's fascinating to me. And it certainly comes into play in business. It's not off on the side. Your business comes down to people and relationships. So I think it just makes doing business that much richer and more fun.
Incredible. 210 years, you said, DuPont. So could you give, for our viewers an insight? How does a company survive for 210 years? What's the kind of DuPont DNA?
Yeah. Well, I think it has been consistent throughout the 200 years. And I don't mean this to sound trite, but ingredient number one is we DuPonters all stand on these 4 core values that are not new. They really are 200 plus years old. Mr. DuPont here started the first one, safety, with how he ran the gunpowder mills on that Brandywine River there. Right. And we've kept with that. And our employees find that almost as an advantage to work for a company where, I don't want to say the rules, but the culture, the DNA of how we do business is so clear and defined. We're onboarding all these new employees in Asia. And the first 2, 3, 4 weeks that they spend at DuPont is core value training, which is a huge investment, by us in them. And I talked to those new employees afterwards, and they love it. They had no idea that was such a big feature of working for DuPont. So standing on the core values, and which is ingredient number one around people. I think that one of I'd say 3 reasons we're successful, 210 years, is the talent pool has always been rich with top talent, and including the real inventors and world-renowned inventors. We have those too, but very high capable talent pool is number one. Number 2 is an ability to adapt, to change. We started out in gunpowder, and then 100 years later came polymers and chemistry. And then 100 years later came biotechnology and this convergence that I talked about. So, rich talent pool, ability to adapt. And then third would be maintaining a work environment that is going to induce creativity. You know, the roots of competitive advantage and longevity are creativity and innovation, right? I mean, you can do other things, brand, a lot of other parts of the equation, but the long-term distinguishing factor for longevity and success is innovation. And that's not something you can command and direct as a boss, as a leader. It's something that if you get it from your employees, it's a gift. And so the idea, I think we have it pretty right, is this work environment that is conducive to creativity and innovation.
And again, I mean, on that note about creativity, I think the general view is that Japan is not so innovative. It's kind of very traditional, very conservative, whereas America is the sort of global innovation capital of the world kind of thing. You know, and what's your view on that sort of between comparing Japan and America?
Well, I think that might be maybe one of the most misstated labels about Japan. You know, the best credibility for my point would be this month the World Economic Forum issued their annual global competitiveness study. And I was just going through it this week. And again, for many years in a row now, Japan is highly rated. The WEF measures country competitiveness using 12 pillars. And the 12th pillar is innovation. And I'd encourage you and the listeners to go look at the 12th pillar, and it's about, you know, how many scientists are available in this country, what kind of research is going on, how many patent applications are being filed in leading edge areas, are those patents being cited around the world as leading research for other inventions, how much collaboration is there between the government and industry, between universities and industry in R&D. And Japan is rated by the WEF on these categories as top 5 in the world, higher than the U.S. And so, you know, one of the reasons I'm here centering East Asia activity in Japan is because of this factor. I mean, this is where the science is. If you look at the patents that are coming out now in some leading areas like alternative energy, solar powers, windmills, lightweighting vehicles, biofuels, biomaterials, those kinds of areas, it's the U.S. and Japan. And so that's, I think, again, a mislabel if people are saying that about Japan. It's certainly a reason why DuPont views Japan as so important to its global business.
Very different from the view Western media kind of portrays about Japan. It's like, you know, doom and gloom stories, and the lost decade is now the lost 2 decades. Yeah.
You know, I agree. There's a lot of that out there. I don't think they mentioned this innovation point. They talk about the country debt level, which is highest in the OECD. That's for sure. The aging population. These are big challenges for sure. But I think what's going to lead the world in the next 50 years, 100 years, is scientific innovation. Right. And Japan is a world capital, no question.
Wow. Carl, I mean, just talking to you, I mean, it's kind of infectious, your energy. Like, I was thinking of getting a coffee, but I don't think I need one now. You know, what is it? what is it that keeps you fired up after 30 years? That, you know, you're so fired up. What's?
Well, I think that there's a lot being written now about purpose, the purpose in business of an enterprise, and every company has a mission statement, and we spend a lot of time writing those. And
what is your mission statement?
Well, DuPont's mission is sustainable growth, which we define in a very difficult way. You know, we got into sustainability 20 years ago, before it was a buzzword.
Right.
And it's grown now to really be a key element in the strategy of all of our businesses. But above mission statements and visions for the company is this purpose. And I've had, to your question, I've had a clear sense of the company's purpose in my mind for the past 30 years. It's all about discovery, science-based discovery, solving customer, stakeholder, real problems. And basically, the bigger the problem, the better. And, when you work for a company that can do that sort of thing and aim its science at providing enough food for the world or increasing new sources of energy other than fossil fuel burning, and protecting the environment and protecting people. I mean, those are very noble causes. It's very easy to get excited. So when we work our strategies out business by business and our annual goals and all that, sure, it's just as tough and frustrating as other companies. But overarching all of that, we've got this sense of purpose. I think most DuPont people do, and it is infectious. We're pretty proud of that.
I think a very small example you gave when we met last time was about, is it a de-icer chemical or something up in Hokkaido?
In Hokkaido, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Could you just give it?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually a film that we made with the BBC. There are a number of them on the internet, but this was one that uses a bio-based chemical, propane diol, that we make from a corn source, and instead of the petrochemical source. And it's a film that shows using that de-icer in Hokkaido at Hakodate Airport, which gets meters of snow every year, and they're de-icing the planes every day. And there's a Japanese scientist is interviewed. He flies back and forth from Tokyo frequently for business, and he said he was worried about the environmental impact of all this de-icing. These chemicals that are splashing on the planes. Every plane taking off. And so it's a story about our bio-based de-icer that has a wonderful, zero impact on the environment.
Fantastic. Great. It's so interesting talking to you. And one of the questions I'm always asking our Inside Japan guests is about Japanese historical figures or political figures or cultural figures. Anyone that you've come across that you really admire or like?
There's a lot, but my perspective would be mostly on business, and I've always admired Kenichi Omae, who is I read his book when I first came to Japan in '89, The Mind of the Strategist, and it's still a good book. I still have it circled, and I keep circling new paragraphs. I had the good fortune of having dinner with him last year and shared that with him. Of course, he gets that all the time, I'm sure. But he's a famous business leader here in Japan. Worked for McKinsey for years, and helped me define my approach to business around this book, The Mind of the Strategist, which is no matter what business problem you encounter, you can break it down into components, and then you can identify which variables will impact, possibly solve the big problem, or at least that part of the problem. And I once I went through it with that book, it stuck with me for 20 years. So that would be one. Certainly, Akio Morita from Sony.
Right.
I mean, what a giant. I mean, what he did to the electronics industry. I mean, it was first the Walkman. The Gen Y now doesn't even know what a Walkman is. There's so many generations past that with their iPhone 5s now. But here's a guy that invented a whole new category. The transistor radio, the Walkman, what he did, the whole Toyota family, all the way back to the founder. And I meet with the Toyota executives pretty regularly, and their vision of the automotive industry and transporting people is so noble, and where they've taken the company in the past and where it's going. And certainly, those are the kind of names that come to mind.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let me think. How about, I don't know, final message for our viewers? What would you say, some kind of advice? Remember, there's people from all around the world watching, maybe some people actually in Japan as well.
Well, maybe, I don't know if I'm qualified to give advice, but I would say that since most of your viewers are either in the GLOBIS Business School or perhaps thinking of joining, I would say that, in my career, I went through a big phase in the 80s and into the 90s of the whole quantification mode, which was all about, getting the formulas right. And everything can be broken down into a math formula and is solvable. And that, I think, was extended too far, maybe in the business schools, to lead people to believe that the past is going to replicate into the future. This notion that discounted cash flow models and decision and risk models, can all be souped up and just perfected to the 10th decimal point, and can be great predictors of the future. I think we took that too far, and I think that this is the age now where the pendulum is swinging back, and that what business is more about, maybe 50% about, or maybe even more, is about people, interactions with people, and you will succeed or advance based on your skills in how you can work effectively with people. I can't think of any job I do at DuPont that's alone. Everything I do is with a group of people, and it's not me telling them what to do. It doesn't work that way. It really never did, but it never should have. But it certainly won't work that way now. Discipline and right answers has become a commodity. What the young people in your school and in other schools, I hope will come out with, is this a better ability to work effectively with people, and to create work processes, environments where this creativity and innovation and initiative can become really everyday parts of business. That I think is where we really need to get to solve some of these great world problems that we face.
Incredible, Carl. I think you should come into GLOBIS and do a talk for us. I think. But actually, just one very last question. In terms, cause you mentioned about how passionate and involved you are in training and development for the talent pool, across Asia. Could you and you also mentioned about DuPont's sort of value, the very strong value. You've got these 4 core values, and you seem to be successful in inculcating those values or passing them on to the next generation. A lot of companies struggle with that, especially across Asia. Do you have any? I mean, what's the approach that you're taking that seems to be working so well?
Well, okay. Step 1 is you have to make it clear that these are core values. Exceptions are not tolerated. And so every employee in DuPont in Asia goes through a core value refresher course every year, 4 hours.
Every employee?
Every year, every employee, shop floor to executives. And that core value refresher course is, I like to say, it's always about CDC, choices, decisions, consequences. I mean, every day, all of our employees are faced with business situations that could be challenging versus those core values. And they have choices to make. And they're going to make a decision, and we hope it's going to be the right one. Our communication of what our core values are is to help them make those right choices. So we do our part, and we also make it clear that if you make the wrong choice, there are consequences. And so that's part 1. But it's not just about discipline. In addition to that, it's the additional training that goes on, and about how we demonstrate respect for people in the workplace, how we train our managers, new managers and supervisors around how to behave, their own personal behavior as leaders. So we're investing in people that way, and I think that's it's not easy. It takes time, but I think that's the only pathway to get there.
Fantastic. Carl, it's been great talking to you.
Great to you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks,
It's been
for
great.
asking. Thank you.
That's it today. A very infectious and kind of inspiring interview with Carl, full of energy and very passionate. Even after 30 years with DuPont, still fired up and very passionate. I'm Adam Kassab. You've been watching Inside Japan, and catch you next time.